Hi, I'm Paula. I'm a product consultant and a digital transformation strategist. And today we're going to talk about data hygiene, specifically how to make sure or how to minimize as much error as possible when it comes to values that's going to be inputted in your database. All right, so what's data hygiene? Data hygiene is really the process of making sure your database has data integrity. It could be maintaining your database or cleaning it, and making sure that every couple of months there's some checks that you make sure that your data is has no real issues in between that would stop your software from working or anything wrong or in your or that would generate wrong reports. Okay. So one of the best things or best practices in order to avoid that and ensure good data integrity is to make sure to make sure that the input in your values to make sure the input in your values is correct from the source. So the source is really the origin point of data. So really it's just a CRM, IoT, the forms that you're using, wherever that input comes in the beginning. So in order for you to make sure that you have good data hygiene is you minimize the errors that is inputted from the source. And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to do that from looking at a case study. And I'm going to look over Airtable because they have good CRM and you can transform the views and you can have a form on top of it. And really, this is just, you don't have to use Airtable. This is just a way for you to understand some of those concepts because some of those concepts can transfer over in other tools such as your CRM or your even Google Forms, Typeform, and things like that. So let's look and see what's out there. Okay, I'll see you at the tutorial. In this example, I want to highlight a case study that is fairly common for many small businesses out there. So in this case, we can call a company called Events and Beyond. It's a small event planning business with 6 employees, and it relies on a manual database seen here that's hosted on Airtable to really manage their event bookings, client information, and vendor details. Over time, you can see that the inconsistencies on their data is slowly becoming more of a problem as they manually enter their data. You can see that there's quite a bit of missing contact details or maybe some mismatch event categories that's happening all around, which starts to cause some errors in event logistics and client follow-ups. Now, for this case study, we'll assume that maybe they get emails from clients or they get calls and there's just someone who takes on so many hats and they manually add the information in this Airtable. There's no centralized form that really takes all this information in. I also want to emphasize that this is a very straightforward form. This does not talk about anything that includes unique IDs or event types that has its own data sets and relational database. That is a different type of case study, which I will eventually delve into. But this is more about if you're starting your own business and you just want something up and you don't want to necessarily pay for something that gives you too many features that you don't really know how to use, and you want to use something that is pretty much free since it's still a small company, but then you're starting to see that you will have some problems. So this is just a case study for you to see what can you do to avoid those problems from happening. So to recap these challenges though, we have some incomplete data seen from the missing values there. There's some inconsistent formatting, as you can see, with the party being in all caps or the phone number not being standardized, and similarly with the emails as well. You can see that there's some duplicate errors with the same person coming in, and all of this are probably caused by multiple things being inputted here. So usually manual entry, but manual entry from multiple people. And if there is some integration, it could be like there's manual entries and then it's integrated with one of your website or a source of a source system for you, and it just all goes to this sort of database as a catch-all. So how do we try to avoid that, or how do we fix that and avoid it so that we how do we fix that in the beginning so that we can avoid it in the future? That is what we're going to talk about. So the whole point of this is to find a way to avoid having these challenges. And in order to do that, we're going to create a form, really, that a very simple form that makes sure that users won't forget any inconsistencies, and you will always have values that you need in a particular column so you don't lose important key information, including emails and phone numbers. And it also makes sure that there is consistent formatting as much as possible. And this is going to be fairly straightforward, mainly because it's just one data set that we're working with. And so if we do that here in Airtable, you can just click on Forms, and we just want to build on a new form. Okay, so this is the form version of that database that we were just looking at. Now, you can see something similar in Google Forms or even Typeform in terms of what the concept is. But really, what I just want to show you is how easy you can kind of transform it. And the reason to do that is so that you can have a centralized way to input data to standardize whatever you're going to put there. Because if you put it manually in a database or in an Excel sheet, like what we seen earlier, chances are you're going to have some errors. But we're going to try and reduce that by adding on some rules that we can in this. So put client name. We know that we want it to be names are usually going to be shorter anyway. But more so, instead of putting a client name, I would actually put full name and last name. But right now, let's just focus on one thing at a time. An email right now currently is a long text. We want to make sure that this is an email so that it can provide those rules that stops anyone from inputting something like double ats or not proper email format, things like that. And phone number, same thing. We want to make sure that it's inputted as a phone number. So whatever number they put in, it'll just, the Airtable can just transform that. Event type, as we've been looking at earlier, we only have a few event types. And we want to make sure that those event type is as consistent as possible. And it depends on the organization that you have. Sometimes you want event types that are multiple, like technically a family party can be a party. In this case, we can just put a single select. And let's just say I want date and I want this type of format so that it gives us a very consistent format of what it will look like in the standard table. And that will help later on with the reporting as well. And notes could be long. It could be whatever people want to put there. And catering, as you can see here, is yes or no. I would do something a bit different, but this is fine for our purposes right now. Now, one thing I would like to put is required field. You want to make sure that people put the necessary things that's needed. So is phone number really needed? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, because some people are okay with just email now, but let's just say it's still required. And event date might be required, event type might be required, so you don't lose the most important information. And yeah, so that's a very easy way to create your form. So now we're just gonna fix that event type. Right now, you can see that there's multiple values that's here. Really, let's just fix that quickly, and you can do that by clicking on the rules and clicking on options, and let's just have the options that we want. For it, just want party, birthday. And we don't need 2 corporate events. And it's kind of that's mainly it, the 4 things. And so now just have these 4 that they can choose from. So once you've created this form, you've published the form, and you're okay with it, you're happy. You can add more cover page and a logo later, but you're happy with it. Now, what are you going to do? Well, you want to treat this as a centralized way for you to get your client intake. So, one way to do that is you want to just get you want to be able to get the URL, make sure that this is accessible from anywhere. And if you have a landing page of your own, like right now, I'm just using Canva, for example, you could have events and beyond and just link that, making it very easy for you to publish that website. And once it's done, you can easily just click here and the person will go to this client form. Now, of course, what the whole point of this is having a landing page and a CTA, or a call to action, that you can easily get this. Now, a step above that is if you have another landing page, or you can use something like Wix in the premium account, you could start embedding your code so that once you've embedded it, so instead of them having to click anything, you have your landing page and they just fill it out, and everything goes back to your Airtable. So those are the quickest wins for you to make sure that your data is clean from the start.